The scent of charred timber still clung to my memory, a perverse perfume of success. Her face, once so vibrant, now a canvas of ruin, a testament to my absolute control. I had wanted perfection for Gwen, but the cost I was learning was always paid in blood and broken trust. That moment, a chilling crescendo of my adolescent power, felt like a lifetime ago. Yet the echoes of those choices reverberated, shaping the very foundation of my empire, a journey that began with a high school tennis court and a girl I deemed worthy of my divine intervention. Her name was Gwen, a simple, almost unremarkable name, yet in my memory it's etched with the sheen of ambition and the bitter taste of a lesson learned. We'd shared the same sterile hallways in middle school, but it wasn't until our freshman year of high school that she truly registered on my radar. She possessed a certain athletic grace, a lean, almost predatory beauty that caught my discerning eye. Long dark hair that cascaded like a shadow, fair skin that seemed to glow, and a body honed by discipline. That year, I'd begrudgingly signed up for tennis in gym, a trivial exercise for someone with my particular advantages. I observed her, noted her competitive fire, the way her eyes narrowed with focus, the determined set of her jaw. She was clearly experienced, a natural. Yet she couldn't beat me. No one could. Not then, not now. It wasn't because I was some tennis prodigy. It was because the world in its infinite, pathetic predictability bent to my will. It still does. I am Victor Kane, though back then I was simply a boy beginning to understand the terrifying, exhilarating scope of my power. My family, a name whispered in circles far above the common herd, had bestowed upon me a gift, or perhaps a curse. The ability to mold reality, to make desires manifest, to bend the will of others without them ever knowing. I could attain anything I wanted and people would be none the wiser. Their memories subtly altered their choices, guided by my unseen hand. As long as my interest in Gwen persisted, she was destined to be mine, her path inextricably linked to mine. Looking back, a cynical smile always tugs at my lips. Would she have cared for me truly had I not orchestrated every flutter of her heart, every beat of her ambition? A rhetorical question perhaps, but one that underscores the fundamental truth of my existence. Genuine connection is a weakness, a vulnerability I learned to despise in the squalor of my childhood. Despite my initial fascination with her talent, Gwen struggled against other competitive players. A minor flaw easily rectified, but at the time my attention was fragmented. I was still quite young, navigating the treacherous currents of my own nascent power, learning the subtle nuances of its application. I could effortlessly command popularity, a fleeting, intoxicating burst of validation that quickly grew tiresome. When the adoration became a bore, people would simply drift away. Their minds wiped clean of my recent presence, a convenient erasure of inconvenient attachments. Though I often refer to my abilities as a curse, a dramatic flourish for the benefit of my own internal narrative, the advantages were and remain infinite. It's a solitary kingdom, this power, but a kingdom nonetheless. Gwen, in her youthful naivete, abandoned tennis the summer before our sophomore year. I recall standing several lockers down from her, feigning indifference, my ears attuned to the hushed conversation she shared with a couple of friends. Her tone, though she tried to mask it with casual dismissal, betrayed a raw, palpable pain. It was a dream discarded, traded for the mundane comfort of resignation. A pity. I could feel the familiar twitch in my right hand, the urge to twist Peter's tarnished silver ring, a habit I'd cultivated to channel the restless energy of my manipulations. I'd acquired it after Peter, after he was gone. I told others it was a family heirloom, a lie that gilded my fabricated past. It was her life, of course, and I harbored a fleeting reluctance to meddle. For most of that year, I allowed myself to attempt to forget her, to focus on the endless charade of normal life. Perfect grades required no effort from me, yet I would occasionally feign diligence poring over textbooks to maintain the illusion. In gym, victory in sports was a foregone conclusion, but I'd force myself to exert some semblance of effort to appear human. My power offered countless advantages, yes, but life without a challenge, without a new conquest, could be quite dull. It reminded me of the suffocating sameness of the tenement, the constant hunger for something more, something different. This emptiness, this craving was a void I constantly sought to fill, a relentless echo of Peter's absence. My thoughts, ever drawn to the unfinished symphony of potential, returned to Gwen near the end of the school year. Her parents owned a regional pizza chain, a surprisingly decent establishment, though by no means a culinary marvel. Money, of course, was never an issue for me even then. The chefs in my family's estate could conjure far more exquisite gastronomic delights. Yet I'd found myself on a whim stopping in one day with a couple of friends, still clinging to the fragile facade of a normal existence. And there she was, sweeping the floor, her movements listless, her spirit dimmed. It was a stark reminder of the mediocrity I had sworn to escape, the kind of life Peter had been denied. She could be so much more. The thought was a persistent hum in my mind, a challenge to my burgeoning sense of power. I had spent the year deliberately avoiding her, precluding myself from nudging her towards her dreams. A rare lapse in my usual proactive approach. Was staying out of her life truly for the best? The question felt like an insult to my inherent superiority, a betrayal of my own grand design. Peter, in his innocence, would have simply wanted her to be happy. But I, Victor, knew happiness was a fleeting illusion and control a far more satisfying reality. A week later, I informed my parents of my decision to court Gwen. They, in their detached, aristocratic way, offered their tacit approval, their eyes already fixed on grander schemes. And so I made my move. I instructed Chase, my family's imposing, impeccably dressed butler, a man whose loyalty was as absolute as his methods were ruthless, to place an order for several pizzas. A special request I added with a subtle smirk: Gwen herself must deliver them. A little over half an hour later, she arrived, a vision of youthful uncertainty, on my manicured doorstep. I met her at the imposing wrought iron gate, a carefully constructed tableau of casual encounter. "Hey, you're Gwen from school, right?" I offered, my voice a blend of feigned surprise and genuine charm. She blushed, a delicate flush that spread across her cheeks as soon as I uttered her name. She liked me, that much was clear, but the authenticity of her affection remained even then a point of detached curiosity for me. Like me, she hailed from a wealthy family, but the chasm between our fortunes, our worlds, required more than a few zeros to bridge. I extended a roll of crisp bills, a casual, almost dismissive gesture totaling $1,500. I find a perverse delight in handing out sizable tips, a subtle flex of power, a reminder of my elevated status. Her eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and confusion clouding their blue depths. It seemed I had perhaps overplayed my hand, creating an awkward silence. "I just wanted to give you an idea of what it's going to be like when you're winning international tournaments," I told her, my smile unwavering, my gaze piercing. I wanted her to grasp the sheer scale of the future I was offering, the grand destiny I was about to orchestrate for her. In that moment, her eyes, though still clouded by bewilderment, seemed to ignite with a spark of renewed hope. She was ready to try again. "Wait," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "How did you know I used to play tennis?" I downplayed my answer. Of course, a practiced art. One must never appear too eager, too omniscient, lest the mark suspect the puppet master's strings. I could have been blunt, even lascivious, my power allowing for any transgression, but self-restraint, I'd learned, was a far more potent weapon. Gwen, in her modesty, was convinced she simply wasn't good enough to be a professional. and from a purely objective standpoint, she was correct. She lacked my curse. She lacked the inherent ability to bend reality to her will. "I certainly hope you haven't quit for good," I told her, my voice laced with a carefully measured sincerity. "I have a feeling if you try again, you'll be able to ascend that plateau." The words were a subtle incantation, a seed planted deep within her psyche. After that day, Gwen abandoned her pizza delivery uniform and picked up her tennis racket again. I wanted her to believe her newfound success was solely the fruit of her labor, her relentless practice, her rediscovered passion. In reality, it was simply my will made manifest. She practiced throughout the summer, diligently relearning skills she'd foolishly abandoned. She never noticed me, of course, a phantom presence observing her from the shadows of the court, nor did she notice Chase, a silent, unmoving sentinel standing beside me, his tall, blonde figure almost blending into the background. "She's certainly a feisty young lady," Chase remarked, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. "We're going to make her a world champion, aren't we?" I said, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk touching my lips. "She'll be the very best," Master Victor Chase grinned, a chillingly devoid of warmth. Chase, like the rest of my family's inner circle, was less a servant and more an extension of my will, a tool honed to perfection. He was the reason my family wielded so much power, why our name, though unknown to the masses, commanded silent obedience. Gwen, in her innocent ambition, had no idea. She was destined to be the greatest tennis player who ever lived, a testament to my power, but it would not be without consequences. The world I knew always demanded a price. Her easy compliance reminded me of that naive collector in Chicago, the one whose entire life, whose every secret I meticulously cataloged in my notebook before his world crumbled around him. A simple flick of the wrist, a whispered word, and they all fall. As soon as our junior year of high school began, Gwen tried out for the girls' tennis team. I watched her play, a silent, unseen specter, my presence a catalyst for her burgeoning brilliance. My attraction to her, a detached intellectual fascination, grew exponentially with each flawless serve, each impossible return. She looked so much happier now, her eyes alight with purpose, a stark contrast to the dejected figure I'd seen sweeping the pizza parlor floor. As predicted, she effortlessly made the team one step closer to achieving the dream I had so generously bestowed upon her. Eventually, the time came for me to finally make my official move. It was a Thursday, and she had a free period during 6th. I, of course, had global history, a tedious subject, but I decided to skip. My appearance was a carefully orchestrated surprise. I congratulated her on her recent success, a casual acknowledgement of the national accolades already beginning to accumulate. Over that year, she had been moving up the ranks, a meteoric ascent, well on her way to playing at the national level. I finally asked her out on a date, a mere formality, and that was the official beginning of our romantic relationship. As pleasant as our contrived romance was, it provided an unwelcome opportunity for me to indulge in my darker impulses. One day I observed her during doubles practice. She was playing a perfect match, single-handedly dominating, much to the growing disdain of her partner. The other girl couldn't even get a hit, and Gwen, by my design, effortlessly stealing the spotlight. I saw no issue with it. The girl dropped her racket, crossed her arms, a petulant gesture of defiance, and refused to play. A small argument erupted between them, a trivial spat that, to my surprise, ignited a spark of cold rage within me. I see now, of course, that the girl's frustration was entirely understandable, a perfectly legitimate grievance. But at the time, watching someone speak to my girlfriend, a creation of my will, in such a manner was infuriating. It was a challenge to my control, a direct affront. How should we punish this foolish girl? Master Victor Chase's voice, a soft, almost seductive whisper, materialized beside me. He rubbed his gloved hands together, a faint, almost imperceptible gleam in his cold eyes. He seemed quite enthusiastic at the prospect of corrective action. I don't want her on the team anymore. I stated, my voice calm, controlled, masking the fury that seethed beneath. Don't kill her or anything, just, make her quit. I wanted her gone, removed from Gwen's orbit, a living testament to the consequences of defiance. Might I suggest paralysis? Chase offered, his tone almost jovial, as if discussing a delightful culinary option. That could work, I mused, a slow, calculating smile spreading across my lips, prompting him to give a low, almost inaudible whistle. The girl's face, a moment ago contorted in youthful frustration, suddenly expressed a searing pain, a profound discomfort. The way she tried to move her legs, the sudden violent tremor that seized her limbs, indicated something was terribly wrong. "That's what you get," I murmured, my voice barely a whisper, a silent decree. I am haunted even now by the chilling ruthlessness of those words, a testament to the cold, calculating monster I was becoming. But it could have been worse. After the girl was whisked away, a terrified, broken mess, Chase informed me that he'd given her a rapidly progressing case of ALS. When I pressed him for further details, the clinical description of the disease, the slow, agonizing decay, I was genuinely horrified. "I told you not to kill her." I snapped, a rare moment of genuine anger escaping my carefully constructed facade. Even if it's slow, I think that goes a bit far. My control was absolute, but even I had limits, a line I preferred not to cross, at least not so overtly. I preferred the insidious, the subtle, the psychological. Luckily, Chase, ever compliant, ever efficient, followed my revised orders, giving her Guillain-Barré syndrome instead. It was still awful, a terribly punitive punishment for what I now recognized as a legitimate grievance. The girl, a casualty of my adolescent hubris, missed the rest of the school year because of it, though she made a full recovery by the next. A small mercy, I suppose, a minor concession to my fleeting sense of morality. This incident, this chilling display of my power, felt like a perverse echo of Peter's suffering, a twisted manifestation of my inability to save him, now turned outwards, inflicting pain instead of preventing it. That was just the first of several instances, a dark catalog of my interventions harming those who played with or against Gwen. She was going to be the best, and I was going to ensure it no matter the cost. At this point, she was playing the best games of her life, a flawless automaton of my design. I became complacent for a bit, a dangerous lapse in my vigilance, and one day decided not to attend one of her games. A mistake. I was later informed that without my presence, without my subtle influence, she was losing. The thought sent a jolt of primal fear through me, a chilling reminder of my own vulnerability, my own need for control. I hurried to the venue, arriving just in time, my very presence a silent command causing her opponent to double fault while serving. Gwen, fueled by an unseen surge of power, made a massive comeback, winning the game. Unbeknownst to her or anyone else, when I arrived, her opponent sustained a wrist injury, a subtle, debilitating blow that went undetected until after the game. Gwen's opponent had been a stubborn young woman, a defiant spirit who had a habit of ignoring pain. A weakness I exploited. There were other such instances, moments when I allowed Gwen to play without my direct intervention, without giving her overt advantages. Occasionally, she didn't need me, her natural talent shining through a brief illusion of independence. But most of the time, I would give in my need for control, overriding my desire for her to appear self-made, causing her opponents to fumble, to swing their rackets the wrong way, to succumb to an unseen force. It was a compulsion, a need to assert my dominance, to prove that I was the one pulling the strings. It was a familiar feeling, this need to orchestrate, to manipulate, a direct consequence of the chaos and helplessness of my childhood. It was the only way to ensure I'd never be that powerless boy again, watching Peter slip away. I was at my worst, consumed by a chilling fury, the day one of Gwen's opponents deliberately tried to hurt her. Gwen was winning by a comfortable margin, her victory assured. But her opponent, a resentful, bitter girl, retaliated by serving the ball with a vicious intent, aiming directly for Gwen's face. Twice in a row, Gwen had to put her racket up, a desperate defense just to protect herself. The referee, a blind fool, did nothing. I took matters into my own hands, my will slowing the ball's trajectory, causing it to fall harmlessly. Shortly thereafter, Gwen won, oblivious to the insidious intervention. I was livid about that woman's behavior. The audacity, the sheer disrespect. She wanted to leave bruises on my creation, on my Gwen. I took immediate action. Once the match ended, my voice a low, dangerous whisper, I ordered Chase to ruin the young woman's face. He did so with chilling efficiency, making her the victim of a house fire the very next day. She lived a testament to his perverse sense of restraint, but was left with numerous scars and a completely unrecognizable face. The scent of charred timber, the perverse perfume of success, lingered in my memory for weeks. It was a grim reminder of the lengths I would go to maintain my control, my perfection. It echoed the lessons I'd learned from the botched deal with that collector in Chicago, how far one must go to ensure compliance. After realizing the full gruesome extent of what I had done, a rare flicker of something akin to remorse stirred within me. I stopped requesting such extreme retaliations. I was reluctant to have Gwen's opponents injured in any overt way, opting instead for more subtle, less traceable interventions. Having them stumble or simply swing their rackets the wrong way, their minds clouded by an unseen influence. My ambition, however, remained undimmed. In the end, it paid off. Gwen, my puppet, my masterpiece, could finally play at the national level, her career a shining monument to my hidden power. But I didn't feel comfortable with what I had done, not truly. The satisfaction was hollow, a gilded cage. Also, my relationship with Gwen, once a fascinating experiment in control, was becoming more intimate, yet it felt increasingly fake, a hollow echo of genuine connection. Did she truly love me? Or was it merely the lingering effect of my manipulations, the subtle strings I'd woven around her heart? I was in a position where I could marry any woman I wanted, live happily with them at will, as the saying goes. As nice as the thought sounded, I kept wondering how things would have played out had I been more of a normal person, a man unburdened by this relentless need to control. It was a question that gnawed at me, a reminder of the boy I once was before Peter's death hardened me into what I am today. I decided to put that to the test one day, a foolish indulgence. I walked home with Gwen, a rare moment of manufactured normalcy. We stopped in a secluded gazebo in a nearby park, and I allowed myself to be drawn into the charade of passion. We kissed, and for a fleeting moment I almost believed it. I loved her, or at least I loved the idea of her, the perfect projection of my desires. She was amazing, everything I'd wanted, but I needed to know if it was real, if any part of this was unblemished by my touch. There's a way to loosen the threads of my control, a subtle unraveling of the spell. I stopped our kissing session, pulling back just enough to stare deep into Gwen's beautiful blue eyes. My own gaze unwavering, searching for a truth I feared. "What's wrong?" she whispered, her brow furrowed with concern. "This doesn't feel right." I told her, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Am I a bad kisser?" she asked, a flicker of insecurity in her eyes. I shook my head, a slow, deliberate movement. And then I spoke my real last name, the name almost no one outside of my family and my most trusted servants truly knew. It was a name that carried a certain weight, a certain immunity to my influence. My fears, my deepest insecurities sprang to life as her expression shifted, the confusion deepening, a veil lifting from her eyes. "How do you feel now?" I asked, my voice laced with an uneasiness I rarely allowed myself to betray. She shook her head again, a slow, dawning realization washing over her features. "You're right. Something feels off, but I don't know why." The spell was breaking. The strings were fraying. From there, we grew apart, a slow, agonizing drift. We still dated, spent a lot of time together in and out of school, but the passion, the manufactured intensity was gone. She tried to act like she was still interested, a pathetic attempt at politeness. But it seemed now that she was just trying not to let me down, her sense of obligation, a lingering chain. I'd been so supportive of her now national tennis career, a career I had gifted her. And it seemed she felt obligated to stay with me because of it. It was a familiar pattern, this dependency, one I had seen in others, especially Emma, whose quiet resentment I had to constantly manage to prevent a full betrayal. Our relationship, a fragile construct of my own making, had been a lie, and so I broke it off. It was a quiet breakup, devoid of drama, a testament to the emotional distance between us. She acknowledged it, her eyes vacant, and walked away as though it meant nothing to her. It hurt like hell, a sharp, unexpected pang of something I refused to name, but I accepted my decision. I had freed her from my spell, and in doing so, perhaps freed a small part of myself. A few years later, the memory of Gwen had faded almost entirely. Since distancing myself from her, I had also begun distancing myself from my family, from the suffocating influence of their power, and from Chase, my loyal, amoral shadow. I hate having this ability to manipulate the world around me so easily, this constant gnawing hunger for control. I've hurt people for my own selfish desires, ruined a couple of lives, all in pursuit of a hollow sense of victory. In my family, such actions are considered normal, even lauded, but I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be the monster they created. This feeling, this internal conflict, has been a constant companion since that disastrous auction of secrets. When I realized my manipulations were attracting darker forces that knew too much about my past, threatening to unravel my carefully crafted persona. In spite of this burgeoning moral conflict, this unwelcome introspection, I finally returned to my family's nefarious luxury, succeeding my late great-grandfather, a man whose legacy of ruthless power I was now bound to uphold. I found out recently that Gwen's career is faltering, her ambition dimming once more. And I've been offered the opportunity to come to her rescue again, to rekindle the flame, to become her personal god of fortune. If I want to, she can still become an international champion. If I want her, she can still become my wife, a perfect, pliant companion. I can undo my confession to her in that gazebo, erase the moment of weakness that shattered her illusion. The thought, seductive and dangerous, has been a constant companion. I've started checking in on her again, discreetly, of course. Whether she's out running errands or relaxing at home, I've had the opportunity to spy on her, to observe her, to reevaluate her potential as a pawn in my grand design. The more I think about her, the more I want her back in my life. I've been feeling rather lonely lately, despite often being in the company of others, a familiar ache that reminds me of the empty gallery. The profound blow where a deal gone wrong stripped me of my illusions of invincibility. My new butler, Sam, a far less enthusiastic presence than Chase, seems quite fond of the idea of bringing her back into my life. I want to see Gwen again. I want to help her become the tennis legend she deserves, to be a testament to my power, a living monument to my will. I want to reunite her with her high school sweetheart, Victor Kane, and perhaps this time I'll truly understand the cost.